Hello everyone, welcome to the video tutorial series of the web development. I am your instructor Varsha Tank. Let's start our lecture series today. So today we will learn about the Json. What is Json? Let's learn about it. So Json, that is known as the JavaScript object notation. Okay, so the full form of the Json is what? The JavaScript object notation. What is it? It is a lightweight text-based open standard that is designed for human readable data interchange. Conventions used by the Jsons are known as the programmers, which include C, C++, Java, Python, Perl, PHP, etc. All are using the Json. Why we are using the Json? Because it is very easy than XML. Okay, when we are not using the Json, we are using the XML to transfer the data, but now we are using the Json. The format was specified by the double Crockford. It was the design for the human readable data interchange, and it has been extended from the Java scripting language. Okay, JavaScript scripting language. So it is the extension of the JavaScript. So that's why it is known as the JavaScript object notation. The file name for extension is .json. JSON Internet Media Type is the applicable JSON, application JSON, and its a uniform type identifier is a public.json. Now, what are the uses of Json? So, it is used while writing the JavaScript based application that includes browser extensions and websites. Json format is used for serializing and the transmitting structured data over the network connection. Okay, it is primarily used to transmit the data between server and web applications. So, mostly Json is used to transmit the data between server and the application. When application is requesting the data from the server, so at that time server sends the reply, and that reply will be in the terms of the Json. It can be used with the modern programming languages. Which are the characteristics of the Json? So Json stands for the JavaScript object notations that we have seen in the previous slide. Json is a lightweight data interchange format. It is easy to read and write like the it is easy to read and write than the XML. Okay, it is easy than XML. Why? Because it is also in the human readable form, and in XML you have to strictly follow the rules and regulations of the XML. But here you can create the array also. That array is not supported by the XML. Json is a language independent. With any language you can use the Json, with the JavaScript, with Java, with PHP, Perl, etc. Json supports array, object, string, number, value. So all these data types that is supported by the Json. Now this is the simple example of the Json. The example shows how to use the Json to store the information related to books that is based on the topic and edition. So here you can see we have created one Json object. Whenever you are starting the object with the curly bracket, that means it is a Json. Okay, so here you can see we have started the object with the curly bracket, in which we have taken one object, that is book. And again this is what? This is the Json array, because we are using this array, that's why. Okay, so in array two values are there. So here ID is equal to 0, 1, language is equal to Java, edition is equal to third, and author is equal to Herbertshire. So this is what? This is the one record. Now the same another type of record is there. ID is equal to 7, language is equal to C++, edition is equal to second, and author is equal to E. Balaguruswamy. So what is this? So here you can see this is one record, this is another record. So this is what? The array in the Json. Okay, so like this way you can create the Json object, and here you can see the Json object is separated by the comma. Okay. Now what is the difference between Json and the XML? Okay, so Json stands for the JavaScript object notation, and XML stands for the extensible markup languages. Json simple read and write the data. XML is less simple than the Json. Json is easy to learn. XML is less easy than the Json. It is a data oriented, and whereas XML is what? The document oriented. You have to define the document in proper way. Json doesn't provide the display capabilities. but the XML provides the capability to display the data. Why? Because it is a markup language, that's why. JSON supports array, whereas XML doesn't support array. So it is easy in the JSON when we want to access the similar kind of data, and when we want to send it in array. So it is very easy to send it with the JSON, but it is very difficult in the XML. JSON is less secure than the XML. XML is more secure. JSON files are more human readable than the XML, and here XMLs are the less human readable than the JSON. JSON supports only text and number data type. XML supports many data types such as text, number, images, charts, graphs, and moreover XML offers the options for the transferring the format of the structure of the data with the actual data. Now here you can see this is the example in the JSON and the same example in the XML. Okay, so here employees is there, and which we have the 3 records. So employee array is there in the JSON object. So name is equal to Vimal, email is equal to this, same way name is equal to Rahul, email is equal to this, and next record is about the Jay and his email. And same records you can define in the XML file like this way. So this is the different representation in the JSON as well as in the XML. Now what is the similarities between JSON and XML? So both are simple and open. Okay, both are simple and both are open source. You can use the JSON as well as you can use the XML. Both supports the Unicode. So internationalization is supported by the JSON and XML both. Both represent the self-describing data and both are the language independent. Now JSON example can be created by the object and array. Each object can have the different data such as text, number, boolean, etc. Okay, let's see the different JSON example using the object and the array. So a JSON object contains the data in the form of the key value pair. Okay, always the data in the JSON object will be in the key value pair. The keys are string and the values are the JSON types. Keys and values are separated by the colon. Each entry, that is key value pair, is separated by the comma. So here you can see this like the dictionary. Okay, so curly brace represent the JSON object as I told you in the previous slides. So here you can see this is what? This is starting of the JSON object in which we are defining this employee, in which we are defining its field. Now next is a JSON array example. So the square bracket represent the JSON array. So if it is a defined square bracket inside the JSON object, then we can say there is a JSON array. A JSON array can have values in the object. Let's see the example of the JSON array having the values. So here you can see this is what the array that is created of the name of days. So let's see the example of JSON array having the object. Okay, so this is just what? Values, and this is the object that name is equal to Ram and email is equal to ram@gmail.com. So this is what the JSON array having object, and this is what the example of JSON array having the values. Now here you can see this is the JSON example. So here you can see we have created one JSON object, okay, in which age is equal to 24 is there. After that hometown is written over here and gender is written over here, and how we can access the value of the JSON. So we are writing the document.write. JSON is json.age. So if you want to access the value, you have to access this object name dot this value name. So json.age, json.hometown and json.gender. So this way you can access the value. So here you can see the output that is JSON is 24, and for this the output that JSON is made. Got it? So like this way you can create the JSON object and you can define the JSON example. Now why we have to use the JSON? The JSON format is syntactically similar to the code for creating the JavaScript object. Because of this, a JavaScript program can easily convert JSON data into the JavaScript object. So the format is text only, and JSON data can easily be sent between the computer and it can be used by the any programming language. Now, JavaScript has a built-in functions for converting the JSON string into JavaScript object. So we have two types of string, that is a JSON parse and JSON stringify. So JSON parse is used to converting the JSON string into JavaScript object. So at that time you have to use this method, that is json.parse. And next, JavaScript also has a built-in functions for the converting an object into JSON string. So for that you have to use the JSON stringify. Okay, so like this way you have to use the JSON parse and JSON stringify. So here you can see in this example, here we are creating the object from a JSON string. So here you can see constant text is defined, or you can define the var text, let text, etc. equal to name John, age 30 and city New York. So this is what the JSON object that we have defined. Okay. Now we have parsed this object using the json.parse method. So what will happen? This will be converted in the JSON string in the object, okay, from the JSON string. So document.getElementById demo.inner, all of you are aware about this. This is the DOM manipulation method, or you can print directly document.write object.age. So that means what? We are printing the object.name as well as object.age. So it will print the John and 30. So the name John will be printed and the 30 will be printed. Same way, json.stringify method. So stringify method, that is what? It's create the JSON string from the JavaScript object. So here you can see, here we have defined one object in which we have defined name John, age 30, city New York. So here we have defined the JavaScript object. From that, from the JavaScript object, we are converting it into the JSON string. So for that, you have to use the stringify method. Okay, so constant myJSON is equal to json.stringify. Here you can see we have written over here stringify in bracket object, because we have created JavaScript object in this. So document.getElementById demo.innerHTML, that is equal to what? myJSON. So what will happen? We have defined here the myJSON, in which we have defined the JSON stringify object. So whatever the value of this method will be stored in the myJSON. So that means the object will be converted in this JSON string and it will be stored in the myJSON. And now you can print the myJSON. So it will print the JSON of JSON string. So here you can see it will be converted in the JSON string name John, age 30, city is equal to New York. Okay, so like this way you can convert the JavaScript object into JSON string into object. Everything is possible. So for that you have to use this parse method and the stringify method. So summary of this lecture. In this lecture we have learned about the JSON variable, JSON. Okay, so that is the functionality from the JavaScript. Okay, the full form of the JSON is JavaScript object notation. So ultimately it is defined over the JavaScript. So we can use this JSON to parse the string from server to applications and from application to the server. And when the data is traveled from this application to server and server to application, so that will be in the terms of the response and request, that we have already learned, that HTTP request and HTTP response. So when data will arrive from the server in the terms of response, so at that time data should be stored in the specific format, and that format should be supported by the application. For that we are using the different libraries like Json and Json. That libraries are used to convert the data that is retrieved from the server into particular format, so that can be displayed by the application. Okay, so this is all about the JSON. Practical I will share. Okay, so remaining interesting topic we will cover in the next lecture. Thank you for watching. We will meet in the next lecture with a new topic. Thank you.